Hi, community group leaders and teachers. I hope y'all are doing well, having a wonderful day. Hey, I'm excited I get to introduce to you the Pastor's Cut for this next week for October 21st. We are exploring another chapter that probably most of us are familiar with, John chapter 11, the story of one of Jesus' close friends and close friend families, Lazarus, Martha, Mary, and how, quite frankly, how Jesus helps several individuals process grief by meeting with them at whatever level they're at. Whether it's meeting Martha at the head level, who's just processing grief in her mind and can't seem to get out of her mind, or Mary, who's just so overwhelmed with the emotions of grief that she's pouring out her heart. Or maybe it's even the crowds who are walking alongside of Mary and Martha that are just processing with their hands, that are serving, that they're coming alongside of. I love how Jesus is very intentional as a difference maker in walking alongside of each of these three different characters in whatever season that they're in the process of grief, and invites them and encourages them to have a relationship with the resurrection and the life with the Father through Him. Really, really incredible conversation. I certainly pray that you have great conversations about that. Couple of cool facts about the passage. This passage records the shortest verse in the entire Bible, John 11:35, Jesus wept. The second shortest verse is Luke 17:32. I'll let you look that one up for another time. But really, the heart of the passage I share with you, or one of the cool things about the passage, is a worship song was born out of this passage. I shared a little bit about this in the introduction to the Pastor's Cut. A worship leader named John Mark McMillan was in the studio recording his second album in Jacksonville, Florida. Well, about the same time in 2001 as this was happening, just before 9/11, there was a youth pastor in North Carolina that was praying for revival in his city with a bunch of other youth pastors. They prayed and they interceded, asking God to move, asking God to so touch the lives and the hearts of youth there locally as well as across the nation, that he prayed, God, may you do something so amazing that even if it requires my own life dies to start something, may you do something amazing. Well, that night, the youth pastor was in an accident and actually died. It was crazy. John Mark McMillan got word because it was his best friend. He's in the studio, he's between sessions, and that night he just was so devastated. He stopped recording for that night. He went alone to pray. He opened up the Bible to John chapter 11. And the verse after the shortest verse in the Bible, it writes that Jesus grieved after Jesus was crying over the death of Lazarus. The crowds observed how he loved him. Well, that verse kept sitting over and over and over again in John Mark McMillan's mind. And so he began to write the lyrics to How He Loves Us, How He Loves Us So. It became an amazing song that many of us know and have sung and celebrate as an amazing worship song that's actually impacted millions of people for the sake of the gospel. It's a great song that was inspired by this chapter in the Bible as someone was processing grief. And maybe people in your group are processing grief. This hit home for me as I've recently been processing grief with my grandmother having passed recently, with my best friend having passed recently. I know that Jesus has been a difference maker for me, and I know that He wants me to be a difference maker and invites each of us to be a difference maker in the lives of others as they walk through grief, ultimately reminding them of the hope that Jesus promised us, that if we lean in Him who's the resurrection and the life, if we lean in Him who's the way, the truth, and the life, there is a way to the Father, but it is through Him. And if we remind people that Jesus came into the world, not to condemn the world, but to save the world, that all who believe in Him will find eternal life. There's incredible hope in the gospel and in Jesus as we lean into Him. So I pray that you have great conversation this week about who Jesus is as a difference maker, how Jesus made an impact in your life, in my life, in the life of John Mark McMillan, in the lives of these three characters in John chapter 11, and how we can make a difference in all of our lives. Thank you.